Please unmute.
Oh, okay na?
Yes po.
Okay. So we begin. Hi. Greetings to you all, UPLB alumni and others in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and overseas in USA, Canada, Europe, Asia, and others. Hi, I'm Roger Quino, your MC for today in this webinar. You're listening to the UPLB College of Agriculture Class 60 sponsored webinar on Masagana 99. The theme for this webinar is Remembering Masagana 99 and Lessons Learned. But before we are carried away, may I get your attention for the singing of the Pambansang Awit, followed by the invocation. Back to you, Jim.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Hayang mahiling, kaya sa sinangalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyagan ang magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ang pangaw, ay hinanang tuglakaw, isang paglayang minamahal. Ilang matawad mo'y tagumpay na naghihiling, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may maghihiling. Lumalang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming bigaya ng pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please unmute po, sir.
Jim, can we flash the questions for this survey now?
Yes, sir. So we will be please direct your attention also po to a survey that we have. You can go to mentimeter.com. I'll be flashing it on the screen in a while. And here. Okay, so you can actually go to menti.com po and type 5467905. If you could please write in that specific question the state or province and country where you're watching from. That would allow us also to have a better understanding of where everybody is, where everybody's located and watching from. So please go to menti.com and type in 546-7905. 546-7905. Okay, so basically the question will be just asking, you can also see Justin, our colleague here, will be flashing on the screen the real time results of the questionnaire if everybody found their way into the question. Bards, is your screen up and running already? Okay, so we have some answers already. Mostly Los Baños. Okay, so the bigger the word, the more people there are in that specific area. No? So mostly Laguna for now. Okay, maybe we'll wait a couple more seconds and see how many results, how many respondents na Jan Bards. I think this 9 here. Yeah. So if you can go to menti.com, use the code 5467905. Um, that would allow us to have a better understanding of where everybody's located. Okay, meron taga Davao Oriental, meron nasa USA,
May Baguio.
may Baguio City, meron sa campus sa UP Los
Santa
Baños,
Cruz.
and meron from Santa Cruz.
Baka girlfriend mo yon sa Santa Cruz.
Okay. Mostly Laguna. We have. All right. So, sir, I think there will be more coming in. Okay, there's in Muntinlupa. So the bigger the word, the bigger the word, the more people coming from that area. Yes, we will be flashing it later, sir. So
Yeah,
for
once
now,
in a while, you know.
for now, we'll give the floor back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Justin.
Okay, friends. Let's go back to our theme for the webinar. We decided on this theme because M99 or Masagana 99 was one of the greatest achievements and a very rare feat in agriculture sector. There are lessons there to be learned that are applicable up to the present time. We need not search elsewhere for ideas on how to achieve the elusive food security and self-sufficiency. This already happened in our land 50 years ago. If not for the COVID pandemic, we would have been in the UPLB streets marching to celebrate the so-called Loyalty Day, a tradition dating back to the 1920s. The context of Loyalty Day has changed from royalty achieved by about 360 faculty and students of the College of Agriculture who signed in to fight with the Americans in Europe during the World War days. Our new context for the Loyalty Day is loyalty to the alma mater, or the observance of the Los Baños spirit. Now, UPLB alumni from all over the world troop back to UPLB campus every October 10 for the homecoming affair. So thanks to the Zoom technology, we can virtually celebrate Los Baños' spirit, although not as genuine. Our technical webinar service provider is the Dream Agritech Consultancy Incorporated, a group of young UPLB graduates and entrepreneurs. Now on to our program proper. Can we flash on the screen the program, Jim?
Okay, sir.
The first part of the program proper is a welcome remark from our Class 60 perpetual president. He was our president during our college days. Up to now, he is still our president. So the irreplaceable Emil Lavier, you have the floor.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Mga kababayan, mga kaeskwela, fellow alumni ng UP Los Baños, magandang umaga. At doon sa mga nakatira sa Amerika, magandang gabi. In my capacity as overstaying president of UPCA Batch 56 and graduating class 1960, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this webinar celebrating Masagana 99 and the lessons we have learned therefrom. I would like to point out that we are defining our class two ways. We are batch 56 of the College of Agriculture and the graduating class of 1960. This unique definition is because, as you know, during our times, completing the BSA Agriculture in 4 years was not really that common. And so many of us with whom we were in batch classes graduated a semester or even a year later for all kinds of reasons. Many because their crops were destroyed by typhoons. But people like Roger Cunyo and Pananiban, because they had little time for academics and they spent most of their time on basketball. Anyway, a number of people have asked us why our class chose Masagana 99 as our theme. And actually, we had 3 good reasons for that. By now, it's obvious that our agriculture has been moribund for the last 3 or 4 decades. And the narrative is that the Filipino people is incapable of rising above mediocrity. And of course, we don't accept that narrative because we know better. We are better than that. And so we considered Masagana 99 as a good proof to disprove that narrative that we are incapable of rising above mediocrity as a people, because some time ago we did succeed with political will and the people rallying behind our government and achieving a national purpose. At that time, to avert the threat of running out of running out of rice. But in addition to that, being able to succeed with political will and public support, there is another feature of Masagana 99 that we are calling attention to and celebrating. Instead of clueless politicians and bureaucrats running our affairs, that time the political leaders and the bureaucrats listened to us in academia, to us technical people, on how better to run a national program. So that's the first reason. We want to assure ourselves that we are better than what we are now. And we have proven that by way of Masagana 99. And the second reason is that it's in line with the theme of the celebrations of Loyalty Day, celebrating and calling attention to the achievements of the university and her alumni. Because Masagana 99 was conceived, proposed, and implemented largely by alumni of UP Los Baños. That's the second reason. And the third reason, related to the second, which is quite personal, is that we members of Class 60, Batch 56, consider Masagana 99 as our story because we were there. We had a big part of that, and therefore we are celebrating ourselves. In the conceptualization and implementation of Masagana 99, many of our classmates were right there at the ringside. The proposal, the initial proposal for Masagana 99 was worked out by UPLB, ERI, and BAEX. And a key player there was our classmate Inocencio Bolo, or Bong Bolo, whom unfortunately we have not been able to contact. But the point man, the action man on the ground on Masagana 99 was no less than our own classmate, Ding Panganiban, who was the executive director of the National Food and Agriculture Council, or NFAC, which was the national agency providing direction, leadership, and funding for Masagana 99. And together with Ding was his deputy, our lead speaker, whom I will introduce later, Ed Kisumbing. Our MC, Roger Quino, was right there in the implementation of Masagana 99 because he was our extension specialist agronomist in the Department of Agriculture. And he had a very important role in the training of the thousands of Masagana 99 technicians. Many of our classmates were extension technicians and supervisors in BAEX, either as farm management technicians and home technology technicians. Many of our classmates occupied responsible research positions in DTI, in the Bureau of Soils, in the Bureau of Economics. Additionally, many of our classmates were senior credit officers in Land Bank and DBP. And many of our classmates were sales and technical managers of the fertilizer and pesticide companies who were providing inputs to Masagana 99. So those are the three reasons why we chose Masagana 99 as our topic. So now let me proceed to my assignment, which is to introduce our lead speaker in the person of Ed Kisumbing. I'm afraid my introduction of Ed Kisumbing will be a little different and lengthy. I will introduce Ed by way of remembering and recalling his illustrious ancestry. Not many of us are aware that Ed Kisumbing belongs to that illustrious six-brother family of Kisumbings of Los Baños. These famous Kisumbing brothers grew up in Los Baños, and most of them obtained their Bachelor's of Agriculture degree at UPLB. So Ed was a grandson of the eldest of the Kisumbing brothers. The eldest Kisumbing was Emilio Kisumbing. He was a civil engineer, graduate of Cornell University. Probably the first Filipino ever to obtain an engineering degree from Cornell in the 1910s and 20s. And the only son of Emilio Kisumbing was Manuel, the father of Ed. The father of Ed was a graduate of agriculture class of 1939, major in entomology. And he has a little interesting story to tell. Because Manuel Kisumbing, the dad of Ed, was the sparring partner of Josing Umali, our former Dean Umali. And the story was when Dean Umali eloped with Zenaida, the daughter of the Los Baños mayor, they hid in the place of Manuel Kisumbing in San Andres. I'm sure you will have heard this for the first time. The second Kisumbing was Manuel, who was a doctor of medicine who practiced in San Pablo, who worked on tuberculosis, and who is credited as a pioneer in the application of radiology in medicine in the Philippines. The third Kisumbing, the third grandfather of Ed, was Francisco. Francisco obtained his BS Agriculture and Master's from Los Baños and proceeded to obtain a PhD in Colombia in chemistry. He came back to the Philippines and taught industrial chemistry. And there was a story that the Parker Quick Inc. was a portmanteau or an abbreviation of the name of Kisumbing and Inc. But of course, the Parker Company of the United States is challenging that. But that's a story. But Francisco Kisumbing made a name himself in industrial chemistry in UP and in the Philippine scene. The fourth Kisumbing was Eduardo, national scientist Eduardo Kisumbing, who is globally well known for the systematics of Philippine orchids. That was Eduardo Kisumbing, the national scientist. And the fifth one was Norquis, Norberto Kisumbing, who together with his son Norberto Jr. put up the Norquis Yamaha motorcycle company in Cebu. I could not trace the sixth and last Kisumbing, but that's my way of introducing Ed by recalling his illustrious ancestry, who were all natives of Los Baños, and half of whom obtained their degrees from So with that lengthy pasakanya, let me now introduce Ed properly. Ed was a scholar of Philippine Packing Del Monte. And so upon graduation in 1959, he went and did research for Del Monte. After a few years, he joined the faculty, and not too long after, went to the University of Minnesota, where he got a degree in horticulture, a straight PhD in horticulture. Ed came back with the help of Ruben because Ed didn't have money to come back. Ruben, who was now occupying a responsible position in the college, helped Ed to get the transportation money to come back. So it's by that time the Masagana 99 was launched, and Ed was borrowed by the Department of Agriculture to serve as a deputy in NFAC, a deputy to Ding Panganiban. And so Ed had a very important function in Department of Agriculture for easily 10 years because he stayed there as a seconded staff of the university until 1986 after EDSA. Incidentally, there was a little story about Ed because after the proclamation of martial law, Ed was picked up by the military intelligence and detained in Canlubang together with our other classmate, Ruben Aspiras. Ed was the president of the UP Los Baños College of Agriculture faculty, which was very active. And so he was suspected of having ties with the left. Fortunately, he was detained only for a few days. Anyway, he joined NFAC and helped in the implementation of the Masagana 99 until 1986, after the Marcos administration left. So Ed came back to UP and very shortly after joined the World Bank, where his assignment was helping East Africa. And among East Africans whom I've met many times during my other career, they were all in all praise and high esteem for Ed, because Ed was credited for helping Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and all those East African countries establish their national agricultural research systems. So Ed multiplied the PICARD in so many countries in East Africa, and the East Africans have not forgotten. But also Ed is credited for helping the colleges of agriculture in those East African countries. So the model was very much like our PICARD and UPLB connection. But Ed also helped also in Indonesia and in the Philippines. So I hope Ed will not mind for that very lengthy introduction. So fellow alumni, classmates, and friends, it's my honor and pleasure to give you Dr. Edgardo C. Sumbing. Thank you.
Greetings and welcome to everyone joining this webinar on the Masagana 99 program. I greet you all a very good morning from way out here in Vienna, Virginia, in the United States. I look forward to a productive discussion of this program and the role it played in our nation's history. My assignment for today is to provide an overview of Masagana 99 for many of you who may not be familiar with this program. I will try to do this based on my best recollections of the events that transpired almost 50 years ago. If I miss anything, I'm sure other participants will be able to fill in the gaps. Masagana 99 was conceived under the administration of President Marcos, primarily to respond to this anticipated nationwide rice shortages caused by a series of national calamities, particularly a widespread infestation of the deadly Tongu virus in 1971, followed by a devastating flood in central Luzon and a severe 10-month drought in 1972. Launched on May 21, 1973, Masagana 99's declared goal was to promote rice self-sufficiency by raising the national average palay yields from 40 kabans per hectare to 99 kabans per hectare. Masagana 99 planned to achieve this by encouraging farmers to use high-yielding varieties and low-cost fertilizers and pesticides. The program included a supervised credit scheme which provided low-interest, no collateral loans to farmers to pay for this technology package. Masagana 99 implementation was coordinated by the National Food and Agriculture Council, comprising cabinet-level officials of all relevant government agencies and private sector representatives. I joined Masagana 99 on its second year of implementation. Secretary Tanco borrowed me from the UPLB to serve full-time in the Department of Agriculture as deputy of Mr. Domingo Ding Pangadiban, INFAC's executive director. Masagana 99 was an emergency program to supply enough rice to consumers to avert widespread famine that was feared to trigger a national security crisis. Rice stocks were almost gone in 1973, and the government had to mix corn grits to continue supply. White rice started to disappear from the markets, and long lines of people waiting for rice rations were seen in Metro Manila and other provinces. No rice was available from traditional suppliers abroad. The government was very concerned that the armed forces already fighting an armed insurgency would be hard-pressed to suppress another major crisis. Masagana 99, by making rice available, will be playing a major role in maintaining peace and order and enhance the security and survival of our nation. What were the key elements of Masagana 99? The first one is supervised credit. To encourage farmers to take full advantage of the Masagana 99 package of technology, a financing scheme was devised. The main features of the credit scheme were low interest loans to farmers without collateral. Farmers should belong to a SELDA, which is a group of 5 to 15 farmers, each of whom will agree to be jointly and severally responsible for each other's crop loans. And the third, the loans will be guaranteed up to 85% by the government. At the initial phase of the program, private rural banks, including cooperative banks, were expected to finance around 60% of the 600,000 hectares targeted under the program. We are expected to finance around 66% of the total 600,000 target hectares. The Agriculture Credit Administration and the PNB would finance additional areas not covered by the rural banks. The loan varied according to the phase, starting at 700 pesos to a maximum of 900 pesos for phases 1 and 2, and 900 pesos to 1,200 pesos maximum for phases 3 and 4. This scheme worked well initially, but deteriorated over the years as SELDA formation became lax in the effort to expand the coverage of Masagana 99. In many cases, farmers in the group did not even know each other well. The second component is the agriculture extension and training support. As envisioned Masagana 99 would make extensive use of agricultural extension as a key instrument for assisting farmers to adapt the package of technology and to follow prescribed methods of modern farming. The program relied heavily on the advice of extension agents from the Bureau of Agricultural Extension, the Bureau of Plant Industry, and the local government units. Governors and mayors provided general oversight over the technicians, but day-to-day operations were supervised by NPAC, provincial, and municipal officers. In all, over 8,600 technicians were involved in Masagana 99. All operating expenses and allowances were provided by NPAC. Unfortunately, more and more responsibilities were given to the technicians, cutting into their time for advising farmers. They were required to also assist in distributing seeds, fertilizers, and other inputs, and in loan processing and collection. Assigning all these additional duties to technicians, particularly in loan processing and collection, was a major mistake. A crash training program on modern rice cultivation was given to extension technicians. Over 3,000 were trained in the first 2 years of Masagana 99. This was a massive undertaking and took a lot of the DA's time. TANCO decided to alleviate the situation by establishing the Philippine Training Centers for Rural Development, PTCRD. This was a network comprising a national training center, 5 regional training centers, and 6 farmer training centers. The national and regional training centers will be under the direction or will be under a board chaired by the presidents of the host institution. The farmer training centers was managed by a board chaired by the governor. TANCO believed that academic institutions by their very mandate are better suited for growth and advancement of research and training capacity. He established the Research Institute of Plant Breeding, IPB, Molecular Biology and Biotechnology, Biotech, Farming Systems and Soils Resource, FSSRI, and the National Crop Protection Center, NCP, as part of the UPLB. He said that UPLB is in a better position to nurture the growth and development of these institutions rather than the Department of Agriculture. TANCO intended to eventually transfer the PTCRD to be part of their host academic institution and the FTCs to the local government units. This plan did not materialize, however. In 1987, the DE was reorganized. The Bureau of Agricultural Extension, the Philippine Agricultural Training Council, and the Philippine Training Centers for Rural Development were merged to create the newly established Agriculture Training Institute, ATI. In retrospect, I believe that creating the ATI and keeping it in the DA was a sound decision. The third component was a special vehicle fund to enable technicians to assist more farmers over a wide area. NPAC created a loan program to allow technicians to own a motorcycle. NPAC purchased the motorcycle and the technician took possession upon making a down payment of 20% of the cost. The remaining balance is paid through monthly payroll deductions. The technicians get the title of the motorcycle upon full payment of the loan. The technician who has a motorcycle gets a 75 peso transport allowance to cover fuel and maintenance. The fourth component is the information campaign component. An aggressive information campaign was launched. Secretary Tanco ran this program directly from the office of the secretary. He was ably assisted by Mr. Vic De Jesus and his merry band of information officers and rural broadcasters. Secretary Tanco reached out to major advertising agencies like J.W. Thompson, J. Walter Thompson, to contribute time and talent to produce songs and jingles, posters, and banners to promote M99. Agriculture Extension Specialist were trained as radio broadcasters to provide information to farmers at the break of dawn every day. School on the air programs were also taught through the airwaves, and farmers learned about the new technologies for producing rice and other crops in animal husbandry, storage and handling, etc. Rural radio stations were very glad to provide the time for this broadcast for free because they found that their audience increased dramatically when they have these programs on their stations. The last main component of the Masagana 99 was the management information system. To keep track of implementation progress and bottlenecks, in fact, with the assistance from USAID, designed a highly effective management information system. It served as a monitoring and evaluation system to apprise, in fact, of the progress and efficiencies of the program. Ding Panganiban relied heavily on the MIS to identify areas needing supervision to keep the program moving forward. On the other hand, Secretary Tanco counted on the MIS to give him the big picture whenever a typhoon was approaching. MIS through field technicians reported the total area under cultivation and stages of growth just a few days before a typhoon made landfall. And once the typhoon passes, he gets a report on the area damage. The information enabled Secretary Tanco to quickly estimate the extent of damage and to be the first in line to request for the needed disaster relief and recovery. Masagana 99 was Secretary Tanco's lasting legacy to the Filipino people. He was the driving force in designing and implementing this massive national rice production program with a technology package which had not yet been widely tested. Masagana 99 was not perfect when it was launched, but Secretary Tanco reminded us that we were facing a major crisis and time was running out to prevent it. We could not afford any delays to wait for a perfect program. He said that if the program had an 80% chance of success, we should go ahead and implement it and take care of the 20% during implementation. If mistakes are made, they can be corrected. And that is what we did. All throughout the program, we made modifications, changes in fertilizer recommendations, in the varieties to be used. So it was a constantly changing program as new technologies became available. The Philippines attained self-sufficiency in rice during crop year 1975 to 76 and was able to establish a 90-day buffer stock for food security. In 1977 to 1978, the country produced a surplus, which enabled it to export 89,000 metric tons of rice to its Asian neighbors. The productivity gains achieved by M99 can be seen in the following table comparing the national average palay yields pre-Masagana 99 versus the first 4 years of Masagana 99. Palay yields before Masagana 99 during the period 1969 to 1973 were 1.53 tons per hectare and 1.58 tons per hectare for the wet and dry season, respectively. During the Masagana 99 years, the period from 1974 to 1978, palay yields were 1.68 tons per hectare and 1.97 tons per hectare during the wet and dry seasons, respectively. But only 1/3 of the rice area of the rice farmers were enrolled in Masagana 99. Their palay yields were 1.98 tons per hectare and 2.76 tons per hectare during the wet and dry season, respectively. The yield advantages of Masagana 99 growers versus non-Masagana 99 growers significantly rise to 29% and 75% for the wet and dry season, respectively. In my personal opinion, I believe that overall, Masagana 99 was largely successful by producing enough rice during the most critical period in our history. It averted the horrible consequence of a looming food crisis and the famine that would have occurred. The country remained peaceful and stable. While there were numerous problems, particularly in the supervised credit component, resulting in losses due to misuse of loans, poor repayment, closure of rural banks, I consider these losses an acceptable price to pay for maintaining the country's stability and national security. Recently, national scientist Dr. Emil Javier, in his June 16, 2020 column in the Manila Bulletin, wrote an exhaustive analysis of the successes and shortcomings of Masagana 99. He raised many interesting issues that should merit our attention. I have requested that the webinar organizers make available Dr. Javier's column to jumpstart our discussions on how we can go forward towards attaining lasting food security for our people. Thank you.
You're on mute po, sir. Sir Roger, please unmute po.
Okay?
Okay.
I was saying if you have any question of Ed, please hold on and ask these questions during the question and answer period later. We will now proceed to the discussions presented by 5 survivors of Masagana 99. They will give us a ringside view of what happened during that period. We will start with Sir Orly Sakai. Dr. Sakai was our class 60 professor of economics in UPLB. We remember him as a motorcycle riding young fellow with his BMW big bike. At that time, he was probably the only 2 other people who had the same vehicle. Orly was probably the intellectual nurse of Secretary Tanco at the Department of Agriculture. Of brilliant understanding of Orly Sakai. He is now engaged in tourism, pioneered in Boracay, and moved on to Palawan. Early in his career, he was tapped by Governor Isidro Rodriguez to be the executive director of the Rizal Agricultural Development Council. And he pioneered and he showed proof of concept of a province-led food production program. He was the first one in that program to have planted a large area of IR8, which was still under wraps at the time. And he managed to somehow smuggled caravans of the original seeds and planted it all over Rizal. which had an amazing result. He asked the President Marcos, to be the guest harvester of the first crop of IR8. And that must have became the germ, and the rest is history. He is a mean tennis player, champion of the senior division of the Philippines. So my pleasure to introduce my former teacher in economics, Orly Sakay.
Yeah, thanks very much, Roger, for your very kind introduction. And hello to everyone participating in this webinar. I prepared a statement on Masagana 99, and I hope that you all were provided copies. I stated that the Philippines has become the largest importer of rice in the world. It is cheaper to import rice than to produce it locally. I have therefore concluded that the Philippines should stop growing rice. And I am sure that many will not agree. I listed 10 reasons and detailed in the piece that I wrote. This issue brings back the good old days of Masagana 99. The best performance of rice production in the country was in the earlier years of implementation of Masagana 99. With the objective of attaining rice self-sufficiency, we were able to achieve this, and I believe we were also able to export some rice, but a very limited amount. However, the progress of Masagana 99 was not sustained to a point that rice yields hardly increased. And with the rapid growing of our population, the quantity of rice needed to be imported increased. I was not involved in the implementation of Masagana 99. I was transferred to the Ministry of Department of Agriculture in 1980, and that was already a few years after Masagana 99 was implemented. But my concern with Masagana 99 was on the credit program. President Marcos appointed me as the secretary for cooperatives, and I got him to sign a letter of instruction requiring that 5% of rice production loans would be retained by the Samahang Nayon to capitalize the cooperative banks which I organized. With initially 400,000 borrowers in 1993, with a 94% repayment, the number declined to 85,000 borrowers by 1979 because of low repayment. Initially, 200 rural banks closed. The government should not engage in the rice trade. Rice importation should be left to the private sector in the open market. Rice farmers should be encouraged to shift to the production of high-value crops. They should be provided full support, and this should improve the performance of the agricultural sector, increase farmers' income, and address the problem of rural employment. The shift to high-value crops should take its normal course over time. Rice farmers may retain growing rice provided that they can compete with imported rice by attaining high productivity and lower production costs. They should be accorded the same support as those shifting to high value crops. So thank you for this opportunity to express some of my comments, and I'll entertain questions. Thank you.
Okay. May I declare a flash break? Jim, I got a feedback that many are unable to enter or join us for some technical reason. Could you please give some instruction later on how they can catch up and join this webinar?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
In the public, sir, sorry, they can actually address or at least access the webinar through Facebook and YouTube. They can go to Dream Agri Media Facebook page, also Dream Agritech Services in YouTube, and they will be able to access the webinar as well from there if they cannot enter Zoom po.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Next discussion is our classmate, class 60 classmate, in the person of Ding Panganiban. He was really the person who rallied the troops and the bureaucracy.
Sir, sorry, you're on mute. Pa-unmute po.
Okay now, can you hear me now?
Okay na po, sir.
I was saying that our next discussant is our classmate of class 60 in the person of Ding Panganiban. At the time, during the Masagana 99 days, he was really the person who rallied the thousands and thousands troops of the DA all over the country and mobilized the LGOs, which resulted in the success of Masagana 99. He was Secretary Tanko's hatchet man and Chief Operating Officer of Masagana 99. Until his forced retirement, he was the country's Mr. Department of Agriculture. So my classmate, it's my pleasure to invite you now, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Ako na ba?
Yes, sir, you have the floor po.
Well, my role in this program is very different because I was dubbed as the fellow who implement the program at the field level. On the instance of Secretary Tango at that time, the first thing that we did, three months before the program was implemented, was to mobilize the resources of the government through various ways. And one of it was to name the technicians that will be involved in the program itself. And so after selecting the technicians that had to be involved, we started to prioritize the activities that they will do in the process. And we selected some 3,000 technicians all over the country to be able to organize a technical program that will be implemented at the field level. And on the basis of that organization, in January or February of 1973, we bring in these technicians to UP Los Baños for training purposes. And that training lasted for at least from 2 weeks to 1 month. We involved technicians from all over the country on a level that will put them into practice the programs that will be required and the activities that will be undertaken in as far as the program itself is concerned. So we selected the 3,000 technicians, the provincial agriculturists, and all provincial directors, and program specialists, especially the corn specialists in the process. After that, after the program started, we bring them to, after the program has been implemented by Los Baños, we brought them to the field level in different sites in the region to be able to test whether the training they have had will work. And on that basis, we found out that of 3,000, some 300 or 150 are not yet capable of absorbing what has been trained because of the proximity of the place that they were assigned in places where there are no communications yet at that time. So we started retraining some other new technicians that were involved to complete the 3,000 that would be needed. And after that, the farmers, or the technicians were brought to the farmers' field and worked with the farmers on the process of what will be implemented as a program proper. And so the technicians asked the farmers what he will do if he received 700 pesos that will be given to them by loans through rural banks that were implemented. And the farmers, having found a new beginning, open up and started saying, kami umuutang dahil kailangan namin pang tusto sa bahay. Hindi kami umuutang dahil kailangan namin sa pagkasaka. But when the farmers realized that the need for fertilizer, the need for pesticide, the need for many other activities that will be given, will be undertaken, he did realize that he needs the credit for rice production. And that spelled the difference. Nung panahon yun, ang farmer ay medyo alangan sa gobyerno. And they have never seen a technician working the farms. But this time, they did realize that the government is serious. And so when we started the program in May, Secretary Tango had brought in a couple of technicians from all over the country and started the program in Central Luzon. And of all places, Central Luzon has the most number of provinces under the program. We have Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, Nueva Ecija, Bataan. And of the 5 provinces, almost all of them succeeded in the program approach. And almost 300,000 hectares have been planted in Central Luzon alone. And this is the crux of the matter. When an implementer is given the packages that had to be used, then he will implement it directly. But the most important component of this program in the height of the campaign, in the first year of the program, was the ability of the farmers to accept that the technicians that are working with them are technicians that are graduates of agriculture, wherever they are and wherever they had been. Hindi sila basta-bastang empleyado na kaya lang kung sa kanila ay para makainom o magmerienda and so on. These people that were trained for the purpose of helping them really helped them in the process. And on that basis, the program has been accepted in the first 2 years that it was implemented all over the country. And contrary to what has been said, maraming bagay ang hindi alam ng marami kung bakit nga naging successful ang Masagana 99. Sa aking palagay, bilang nag-implement ng program sa field level, I work with technicians and specialists. And I talk to provincial agriculturist later and tell him that this fellow or that fellow is not working well. So the next time I come up, everything is perfect. In the first year of the program, it is almost perfect that the program was almost 95% in the whole of San Luzon alone. You have provinces like Isabela in Cagayan, Cagayan, Laguna, for one, in Southern Tagalog, and Camarines Sur in Bicol. They have been implementing the program very successfully because this is the first time that altogether we were one in implementing it, not hindi sabog, united. And on that basis, we started implementing some schemes that will provide benefits to our small technicians, like hindi lamang incentives, pati vehicle, special vehicle loan fund, pati nga yung MIS na sinabi ni Ed na importante dahil ito ang nagre-record ng mga activities ng mga farmer and technicians at the field level at dumarating sa Department of Agriculture every 25th of the month for the monthly reports that had been used by Secretary Tango to address the cabinet. And on this basis, we practically made it sure that all that we are doing is not just pasapyaw or tabanjing-banjing lang, kundi talagang serious ang implementation. And that was the situation at the time. Ngayon, marami nagsasabi, failure ang Masagana 99. I agree with it. But I always disagree on the process that they're saying it is not successful because of the loans that were granted. I think it is successful because the program saw to it that the farmer, the technician, and the municipal mayor are all together in one in guiding him to the right direction. And on that basis, we felt that when the agriculture extension was given to local officials, the worst had happened. That was when Masagana 99 collapsed, where only 35 or 36% are bowing, simply because they forgot about the small farmer. Because new technicians were added. They are not agriculturists. They are probably friends or bata na mayor, that they compounded the issue of no funds for them to pay for whatever is necessary as the salary of that technician that they had. But they were assigned also in the program. And so that's it. That's what I felt was the issue that we had to look at this point in time. The issue of the 1970s will be different from the issues of today. Yung sa ngayon, complicated ng problema. Ang dami ng kamay na nakikialam sa agriculture. Ang sasabihin ng isang cabinet secretary, ganito. Ang sasabihin ng isa, ganito. They are all almost in conflict. And on that basis, you cannot subscribe to the idea of commonness and unity. That's what I felt was the bane of the program at this point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ding. You have a very good memory. You remember those details. Anyway, our third discussion in the first batch, because we will do it in 2 batches. The first batch is composed of Ori, Sakai, Deng Panganiban, and now the third discussant. We will break it so that hindi naman masyado kayo maiinip. The third discussant is Rika. At the time, we call her Rika Cortes, but now Renjing. She was Secretary Tanco's executive assistant. She was the gatekeeper of Secretary Tanco. No one can get through and see Secretary Tanco without the okay of Rika. She was a member of the kitchen cabinet of Secretary Tanco. She can tell us the discarding of Secretary Tanco in relation to the other cabinet members, President Marcos, and the international community. So it's my pleasure to call Rika Renjing. It's your floor. It's your piece now.
Okay. To find the unmute. Wait.
We can hear you already po.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rika. Well, in those days, my name was Rika Bernas. Everybody knew me as Rika Bernas. Hindi ko ginagamit ang Cortes nung time kasi. Why is Masagana 99 in our upper consciousness right now? It's not only because we're already of the age where we can indulge in nostalgia, right? Where all of a sudden we accept that we are already in the class of old timers. So that's okay. I mean, there are a lot of good things behind us, but today is for remembering Masagana 99, and in that context, we are remembering the man who was most associated with it, from its conception to its implementation. And now we maybe would like to speak and discuss among ourselves, because this beloved program of ours, and we should be allowed to be a bit emotional about it, because this program is coming into some kind of not really attack, but being called, maybe we kind of smart a little bit at the hearing it called a total mess that had to be cleaned up. So we will not name who is saying this, but anyway, Masagana 99 did not just happen. It wasn't something that just came about at whim. Even for Tanco, it was not brought out in a eureka moment. It was a long period of time. It started from the geniuses in the scientific community, the academic breakthrough brought by the cooperation, UPLB was, it was called UPLB na ba noon? I think it was still College of Agriculture, right? It was not separate campus yet. But anyway, it was not a fluke. Masagana 99 was not a fluke. And why was Tanco the man of the hour then? He happened to be in the cabinet at the time. He was drafted. And he was just caught in that moment where it was a mess. And it wasn't as if it was easy for Bong to just walk in and emerge as with a successful program. He had competition all the time. And even if he had all this competition in his life, it never bothered him, because he had come with the best mentors. Even from the early time, Leo Verata was still younger then, but he was, he was Bong's mentor. Ronnie, Sixto Rojas, his uncle, and people in the business community, the giants like Wasisip, and people who were later in the cabinet with him. They always had a little bit of competition, sometimes not too always too fond. With Ronnie Velasco, for example, Ronnie was in our board of directors, and even when they are friendly, he would always try to tease Bong, ribbing him about. He would sign our checks, and he would say, "Oh, maski na refill man lang ng aking cross ball pen." No, so there was always a little touch of this competition. And in the cabinet, there were people who were closer to Marcos than Bong was. The who were those? The one sikat, siyempre, Bobby Ongpin, Enrile, of course, even people who didn't really want to compete with him. Well, Jess Tanchanco is a very, very nice guy, and but he was more favored by the first lady, and he was always being thrust upon in unwilling competition with Bong. In truth, they became very close friends, and Jess Tanchanco supported him all the way up to the end when Bong was already sick. So he managed to, withstand all this competition, and he also developed very special relationships with people in the cabinet, with people he really admired, Cesar Pirata, for example, Ting, of whom he was very fond, Ting Paterno. And well, anyway, when Marcos ran, he was elected with I think, astonishing win with the margin that was unprecedented. And then when he ran, by the time he ran for re-election, he officially ran under a banner boasting of rice, roads, and re-election. In truth, people write that it was really guns, goons, and gold, but that's not for us to discuss here. It's not very well known that Tanco was helping in the re-election. He wrote speeches for Marcos. It started as a bit of a lark because he was a friend. Rudy Martel was a friend. He was, in fact, very close to my husband, who was working with the Martels at the time. Rudy was married to a sister of Mrs. Marcos, si Alita Romualdez, and we were quite close. So Alita would call us late at night, with all of the stories and also things that were the priorities. But it started because Marcos did not sometimes have this literally boring standard political speeches, and we started somehow writing snippets to improve it. And the joke was that Rudy would come and bring us all these goodies at night when we always worked at our offices in Maida at the time. And Marcos would junk his verbatim speeches from his fancy speechwriters like Odi Corpus. And he would take the outlines that we prepared, Tanco wrote, and we would put in these cards. And the funny thing about it was that we typed it on Orator because that was the Selectric, and sometimes we would have errors because the ball of the Selectric does not correspond to the Orator ball does not correspond exactly to the keyboard. So in spite of that, it was made in such a way that Marcos could choose from catchwords, and he would have a speech that was like extemporized completely. And so from this one, we could see that Marcos was a brilliant speaker. But Marcos also realized that this gift Tanco also had, because invariably Bong would be late, you know, for all his, for most of his engagements and events, and we would rush through traffic, and he would get the briefing, you know, he would get all the figures, and somebody's throwing the figures at him, and then he would walk into the hall, and he would recite this as if it was just something that but just coming out naturally. So uh, Marcos also knew that Bong was brilliant in the sense, and that's why he was considered one of the technocrats, even if really he was not that close. But Marcos and even the first lady grudgingly accepted him because of his, you know, label as a technocrat. But actually, when I think when Tanco was drafted into the Department of Agriculture, this was still in 1970. So I'm realized I'm really dating myself here. His boss was the vice president at the time, Vice President Lopez, who is an old style gentleman politician. And he had to contain his jealousy of this young man who was really brash, impressive, and with the label. But he had a favorite story, and he would say, when the president asked me what I thought about whether he was really asked or not, you know, but before Bong was appointed. But his story was that when the president asked me, I said, what could I say? Then he would look at Bong and then he would say, he's my ihado, you know. So he had a genuine fondness for Bong. But soon after Bong was appointed, or immediately after, he called upon the university in Los Baños to give him a crash course. And I don't know who among this class may have been there, because I'm sure those experts then are still around. And will not, of course, be able to remember because 12 lang ako noon eh. And but I had to sit with this crash course. We listened to all the experts: rice, corn, sugar, coconut, livestock, feed grains, everything, you know. And we got information indigestion. But Bong was enthralled. He was so impressed, and I think this was I think this was the start. This is how his deep connection with the university came started, and this is why he had this connection he had this bond with the UPLB all the time that he was in the department. As all the names that you called, these are all UP Los Baños people. His undersecretaries had the as Emil points out, the impeccable provenance of Los Baños. Orly, although he had already befriended Jusing Omali, and they were equals. But later on, his undersects were J.D. Drilon is also Los Baños, correct? And then, of course, the guys that his bright boys, or his gems, they called, were all from Los Baños. He borrowed people from the university, and even sometimes from the private sector. So Bong also had this gift of spotting talent and knowing, you know, who to bring in. The issue of Masagan 99 is really because at that point, rice was a strong political issue, and rice has always been an emotional issue, and politically it was dangerous, right? So the rice crisis, because of the shortfalls in production at the time, it was, I'm not a technician, but at the time it was okay to import rice. There was no stigma against importing. The government knew that okay, kulang ang supply of whatever, and then they would import whatever they needed. In fact, in those midnight phone calls, that we would get, the message was always very clear, and the fact that at any cost there should never be any pilahan of rice, especially in Metro Manila. And the instructions were literally paliguan ng bigas ang Maynila. And this was why there was a point where we had to barge in the supply, the department. I guess NGA was the main implementer, barging in rice from Mindanao, mixing the supply of corn and all, as Ed has recalled. But the planning of Masagana 99 did not happen overnight. RCPCC was involved in the early days, I think. It was not conceived as Masagana 99 at that point, but the mainstays of what was to be the program, together with UPLB, or basically from UPLB, and later on perfected at NFAC. Christopher Tanco remembers that his dad was passionate about the program. He was passionate. He had really a vision, and he wanted it for its ingenuity, its progressiveness, and he put in days and nights to develop it, and later on to ensure its full implementation. He put in all his vision, energy, political will. And I think the main innovations that come to mind again was the use of marketing and creative communications, what is now called in the trade content, brand storytelling, and content marketing. Those are the catchwords in the history, but actually that's what we used. The information campaign, and for the first time, the use of a professional advertising company to make jingles and banners and all these audiovisual aids. Vic De Jesus was very active in that, together with Jesse Binamira of his NFAC group, and our account executive was John Campbell at J. Walter Thompson. So, in fact, the campaign was so basic to the philosophy of the department that Tanco himself was packaged. He became part of the brand and the image that, we would dress him up in secret ito. He would dress him up in dark suits, dark shirts and light pants, so that his hair would stand out. You could see him against his dark shirt, and he would stand out in any crowd. But the main thing was that Ding points out that it was the technicians. First of all, the brilliant plan, and the technicians. The technicians identified with him because he cut this dashing figure of this helicopter flying secretary. And because they were aggressively fielded to fulfill roles that they did not have before, they also cut a dynamic image in their motorcycles through the countryside, and with the strong belief that they were really helping the farmer. Ding also points out it was the same farmer belief in the technician, the farmer's reception to this new technology. And this, I have to find that because I think somebody, maybe Barker, said that this achievement was to demolish the myth that the Filipino farmer is backward and unimaginative and unresponsive to new technology. This was not true. Emil said this before, that the farmer embraced this new technology. And the fact that, the farmer together with the technicians and the LGU that worked all together, this concert of action is, I think, what made Tanco proudest of all. Never mind the rural credit, because you see, you can say that the failure of credit reflects the government's willingness. How much are you going to pay for putting the rice production back on track? We were in a crisis then. It was the highest priority. And although maybe the detractors are right in the sense that the credit was weak, was a failure in some sense, there is no reason why we should not profit from the lessons of that shining moment. There is also still some fresh controversy and probably some misunderstanding that Masagana 99 was an abject failure. But everyone should, stop talking about this and accept that we did attain self-sufficiency, attain the modest surplus. We received international accolades and the recognition that we did become a rice exporter. But also there may be a negative connotation about Masagana 99 because it was a Marcos project. We also have to say that upon its success, credit was taken, laid claim to, and Masagana 99 glorified, as with many other accomplishments, for which he received accolades as a Marcos crowning glory. In the end, we must look beyond this and look layers deeper to see that it was indeed successful. There's a little postscript to that, and I would like to say that the story of Masagana 99 is really still untold. One of the not funny stories is shared by Pauline Sikam. As we all know, Tanco's doctorate thesis was never finished. His doctorates are honorary. Periodically, we would set aside a few days for his writing assignment, and something or other would always come up. Years later, Tanco received an invitation from Harvard University for him to present Masagana 99, and it would be taken as his doctoral thesis. This was to have been at the faculty club. The year may have been 1982. But as it would happen, Ninoy Aquino was in exile at that point. He was in Boston. And instead, Tanco at the time got involved in the meeting with Aquino, and he decided to wing the presentation. So that this is and at the request of Ed, I have another story, which is also was at the time not funny. We were in New York City, traveling en route to Mexico for the World Food Council meeting. He was already president of the World Food Council then. So he was accorded this airport honors, right? We were at the airport. We were in Mexico as his advance party. The plane arrived, passengers disembarked, no Tanco. What happened? While killing time at the Waldorf Astoria bar, he fell in conversation with an interesting lady. He started talking about the Philippines, the famous Masagana 99 story, and missed his plane. Fortunately, he was able to catch the next flight, and we averted an international incident. But that that
Rika, can you please wrap up in a few minutes?
I'm done.
You're done. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, now at this time, let's take a what I call the picture viewing break. We will see some images uh, of the uh, events that happened during that time. Jim, can we now please present the few pictures of the old Masagana days?
Yes, sir. I'm pulling it up right now po.
Okay. Oh, this was what Oris Takai planted in Rizal, IR8. The first time it had left the portals of Erie. A few weeks ago, which really revived the interest on Masagana 99. You see on the right, President Marcos and Imelda had their feet wet to plant symbolic planting of Masagana 99. Next. This was part of what Emil wrote in his column. Next. Ito yung mga stalwarts na nilapitan ni Secretary Tanco when he had his schooling in agriculture, crash course in agriculture. These are all national scientists. Next. Okay, next. Next.
Yun na po yung last, sir.
Okay.
Mm-mm. I think just to briefly also say, sir, from the results of the word cloud as shared a while ago, unfortunately we can't share the screen. There was some technical issue on the side of our colleague, but I'll share this screen now na merong picture po of the the results po. So you could see that we do have people from different places. We have people from across the U.S. also. We have in Maryland, in Hawaii, and then across the country also we have some people from Muñoz, from Nueva Ecija. Baguio City was mentioned a while ago. We have people coming from Cebu and in Lapu-Lapu City and in Bukidnon. We have people coming from San Pedro Laguna as well. But if you could see this picture, the biggest word or the size is Los Baños. So that just shows that most of the people who responded to the questionnaire are mostly in Los Baños. So that's kind of a quick look at where our participants of the webinar are watching from. And the last update I got from our colleague Dax is that we have 85 people watching from each of the platforms on Facebook and YouTube. So that's about 170 plus the 53 that are here inside Zoom. So that is roughly the number of participants watching the webinar so far, sir.
Hmm. Okay, that ends the first batch of discussion. May I now call on classmate Robin Villarreal and Jim Cano to run the question and answer.
Okay.
Thank you, brother officer. But I think before I start throwing the first question, I would like to make a brief comment with respect to the introduction of Dr. Javier to Ed Sumbing. I remember that when Ed was borrowed by Secretary Tanco, who was then handling or in charge of the National Research and Extension Program in vegetable crops, I called it double jeopardy because since Ed replaced me as the head of the program, Secretary Tanco opted to nominate me to the Asian Vegetable Research Center to head his breeding program. So I said, oh, that must be double jeopardy. And then Dr. Javier mentioned about the numerous activities of Dr. Kisumbing, but he was not able to indicate that Dr. Kisumbing was responsible in the so-called protective cultivation of vegetables in the whole country that you see now. It was his major assignment when I hired him from Minnesota to be the plant physiologist of the program. And since Emil bragged about some of the Class 60 who participated in this activity, I took note that the field assistants, our classmates who did the dirty work, made the crosses, grew out the segregating progenies in the nurses that identified the most promising lines were the following. First, we have Rodolfo Aquino and Rizal Herrera at Erie, and at UPLB, Tomas Masaho, Jose Malabuyok, and yours truly acted as the research assistant of Dr. Escuro. Well, as you know, this program is sponsored by Class 60, so I may as well brag about their participation in this Masagana 99 program. One thing also that I noted in the list of participants in this activity, if you start from Orly Sakay was the OYM in 1964. Ting Panganiban was in 69. Yours truly was in 71. Inocencio Bolo, who was able to make it, was in 72. Emil Javier in 1975. And Ed Kisumbing was the OYM in 1977. And again, bragging aside,
If you will consider that among the list of this TOYM, 5 of them came from the famous classics tea. Okay, the first question that I have is addressed to Dr. Obien. Oh, Dr. Obien is not yet here. All right, so no question for Dr. Obien.
He's already here, sir. Pero sa
No,
next
but will be on.
yes po.
Okay, the first question I think can be handled easily by Dr. Sakay and maybe by Rika. And the question goes like this. Considering that over the almost 50 years since Masagana 99, what lessons have we learned that could revive the farm co-ops, the evolution of agriculture to local governments, connecting agricultural schools and colleges with efforts of the Department of Agriculture in farm and fish production? So the question is addressed to Sakay and Rika.
I've asked Dr. Sakay to unmute po
Okay, yeah.
for him
Thank
to
you, thank
address
you.
first.
Ulitin mo nga yung katanungan mo.
Ito ang katanungan. Considering that over the almost 50 years since Masagana 99, what lessons have we learned that could revive farm co-ops, the evolution of agriculture to local governments, connecting agricultural schools and colleges with efforts of DA increasing farm and fish production?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think that is the most relevant question that you might ask today. Ang problema natin ngayon sa agriculture, hindi lamang rice ang mas murang mag-import. We have many other products of agriculture that is being smuggled. Meaning to say, if it's being smuggled into the country, it's cheaper abroad than producing it here. I believe that we should learn from the lessons of Masagana 99. But one thing is very obvious. Number one, the recipient farmers should be taught better the technology. Secondly, ang problema rin natin, and I was part of it, we implemented a land reform program. Ang nangyari, nagka-chop-chop yung mga lupa ng mga magsasaka. And this prevented the economies of scale and also minimized the adoption of high yielding varieties. So my proposal in terms of the connection with the local government is that we should strengthen community organizations so that support given to farmers will be channeled through community organizations. And in the same way that these community organizations can be supported by the local government. As I mentioned in my brief presentation, I'm not saying that we should forbid rice farmers from growing rice. I'm just saying that we should open the economy and into a free market. And so therefore, it will be a competitive market, in which case there is a large responsibility, not only from the producers, but also from the government to provide full support to our farmers, whether they are rice producers or producers of high-value crops.
All right, let me continue. How about connecting agricultural schools and colleges with efforts of DA, increasing farm and fish production?
We tried this, if you recall, we developed UP Los Baños through a World Bank loan that Dinamali and I were able to negotiate in 1964 to develop UP Los Baños. At one time, we formed a group with Ed Kusumbing and one of the country directors, I think Ed can also expand on this, that we should make UP Los Baños the center of agricultural excellence, and we should tie up all the different colleges with UP Los Baños, so that UP Los Baños will be the center for academic excellence. It will also be the center uh, for leading the program of research and also extension. Proposal which we made to the president was not accepted on the grounds that it's now very difficult to obtain foreign aid. But I still believe that UP Los Baños has a role and can be further expanded so that it will be the center of excellence for agriculture.
Thank you very much. Rika, would you like to add something to that?
Yes. Do I have? Am I on? Am I? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you
yes,
now
we can
po.
hear you, Rika.
I wanted to add a little bit to that because we do NGO work, and I can tell you from personal my personal experience. We did a project in
Okay, start ang ating team para sa team
and so on. And when the technicians are devolved to the local governments, they are eventually they become politicized, and there's this unavoidable human frailty of favoritism and nepotism. And so for me, technicians being devolved to the local government does not work. They should stay with the of agriculture. Regarding the linking of education, we also saw and the farmers organizations, as Orly points out, in Palawan we did a project for a mining company, which is supposed to be a model for the mining community, mining industry, and the farmers organization, the community organizations there we set up, they are doing site specific scientific experiments, say on fisheries in the sitio mismo, and that's a very good thing. And we also saw that there's a great enthusiasm on the part of rural high schools to take part in experiments. They for conservation and for agriculture as well, agro farming. And if this can be integrated into the curriculum of the Department of Education for specific, where there's a mangrove, you include mangrove conservation in the local curriculum, or where there's possibilities for agroforestry, that kind of thing. But of course,
maybe not Department of Education, it would be with Chet. Thank you very much, Rika, for this very interesting answer to the question raised by a colleague. While we are still waiting for questions to come in, here is another one for our classmate.
Sir Ruben.
Ivan.
Sir Ruben.
One more question. I'll throw this to Dean, and then Jim take over on the question.
I'll follow up po sana on what Dr. Sakay mentioned po, if that's okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you for that response, sir, Dr. Sakay. No, I just wanted to ask also, what kind of safety nets or regulations can we establish so that smallholder farmers are protected in the as we aspire to have an open market and a competitive market, which is also it's laudable, but in reality on the ground, normally the smallholder farmers are experience a price squeeze, where they're squeezed from the input side and they're also squeezed on the demand side. So what kind of safety nets or policy regulations can we put in place to protect the smallholder farmers, given that aspiration po? Sir, I've asked, please unmute your microphone po pala. Yes po.
I'm glad you asked that question, how to protect the small farmers. I think that at this point in time, this webinar of ours should trigger a very serious study of agricultural policy. Our problem is that since Ed and I work for the World Bank, the problem in the World Bank is that the policy with the World Bank is subsidy is a no-no, because they're trying to say that we should have a level playing field. But the problem with a level playing field is the undeveloped countries cannot compete with the developed countries. They already have invested a lot of money on research, on infrastructure, and other investments. So you cannot say no subsidy. Now, the question is, should we provide subsidy? My answer is that yes, agriculture should be heavily subsidized, not only to improve production and income from farming, but it should also improve the welfare of our farmers. I see no reason why we cannot give free seeds, fertilizer, pesticides. I said in my paper that we should provide irrigation water free, but for high-yielding rice varieties. Ang problema kasi ng palay is that nakababad sa tubig and you have about 2 or 3 inches of standing water. In a month's time, what is the evaporation of that water? Secondly, there's also a very large claim of the urban population for water. So what I'm saying is that we should have now a very serious study of agricultural policy, so that not only the welfare of farmers, but the whole agricultural sector can be strengthened or revived.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Dr. Ruben? Please click unmute po, sir. Sir Ruben.
Mute.
Okay po.
Okay pa ang time natin?
Maybe one more question, sir, so that we can proceed to Mr. Lustres' speech and then Dr. Obien's presentation po.
I was worried of the time because I look at my watch, it's already 11 o'clock.
Yes
All right,
po.
the question is addressed to Ding Panganiban. Ding, to what extent should we go for mechanization considering the complications of importation of machines and fuel and its impact on rural farm employment?
The idea sometimes may not be the most logical solution because limited ating farms. So small tractors, so yung big tractors lang ang ating pwedeng. And this is very complicated. So in effect, siguro ang
Chappy. Jim, Chappy.
Yes, sir. I hope if we turn off the video of Sir Ding, we could get better reception of his audio po.
I see. Okay. So Ding,
Yes, sir. Sir Ding, can you repeat your answer po?
Si Ding naka-unmute siya naka-mute.
Hindi po, sir. Naka-unmute na po.
Naka-mute na, okay.
Yeah, we might have some technical issues from his side po, sir.
Okay.
Can we address that question to somebody else po muna? And then we can maybe get back in the next round.
Jim, I think we can proceed to the next speaker.
Okay,
I think we can
sige
proceed.
Po.
And then we can settle this later on.
Sige
because
po.
At the end, we can have open forum there.
Mm-mm.
Okay, pare.
Sir
Unmute
Roger,
yourself,
please
pare.
unmute po.
Unmute. Okay.
Pwedeng si Ed Kisumbing can respond briefly on that question. Pakiulit lang sa kanya yung question.
Ed, ang question, to what extent should we go for mechanization considering the complications of importation of machines and fuel and its impact on rural farm employment? But you know, I think Santi can give more to this because Santi is now very active at the Department of Agriculture, in which mechanization is one of the programs.
So, sir, do we address that to Sir Ed briefly for now?
Santi, can you take that question, Santi?
Okay po. Dr. Obian,
Ah.
could you? Yes, sir. Okay po.
Okay, so kay Santi na lang mamaya. Jim, can we proceed?
Yes, sir. I
Pare,
think
go ahead.
I think Dr. Obian wanted to respond to that po.
Oh, go ahead.
Sir,
Go ahead, Santi.
Sir Obian, could you please unmute?
Dapat may
Okay.
tarawih pala mga speaker.
Well, we're mechanizing now 5 billion of the RTL, RCEP money is for mechanization. And because that's one way of reducing the cost of production. Unless we mechanize, we cannot cultivate our lands properly with our little fingers. And the issue of rural unemployment, displacement is not really occurring in all places. In Nueva Ecija, Isabela, and even in Ilocos, it's difficult to get hired laborers this time during the planting season. So we need mechanization, we need transplanters, and the faster we train our people to use these machines, the better. So that's, I think, briefly the answer to the issue. So we have to mechanize. We have to mechanize. The other sectors should also work hard to provide employment for more people. Other countries have done that. Thailand, for example, because they are industrializing, people in the farms are moving to the industries. So we have less people in the farm. Consequently, there is more farms to be cultivated by those who are left behind. And a lot of them now have cultivating, where before they were cultivating only 4 hectares. Now they're cultivating 8 to 12 hectares. So they can go to the farm with the Estrada. They can buy their own machine because they're bigger now. This scale, farm scales, is evolving naturally because of the progress in employment in other sectors. The less farmers we have, the better. Because then they can mechanize. Then they become rich. The reason why there are so many poor farmers is because they have very small land area to cultivate. So the issue is that other sectors in the economy should also provide employment for our people. They cannot be kept like that all the time. All progressive countries have very small number of farmers. Korea, for example, in 1960s, there were 53% of the population were farmers. Now they are less than 10%, maybe less than 5%. Thank you. Is okay? Is that okay? Did they come through?
Thank you, sir. Yes po. Sir Roger?
Yeah, let's move on to the next set of discussions, starting with Mr. Jose Lostre. Unfortunately, he cannot be physically present or speak from home because he's a little indisposed. but he sent his message, and it will be read by one of the uh, moderators. But anyway, to introduce Mr. Jose Lostre, he's a graduate of College of Agriculture, and he's the present CEO of a chain of rural banks in Nueva Ecija. After 50 years, he is still being harnessed as a rural banker. He can tell us the role of the rural banks at the time, particularly his own rural bank, and what did the bank do in order to get farmers or to convince farmers to take a loan with the bank. So let's get the paper of Jose Lostre now, read by one of our moderators.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much po. Okay, so I have the privilege of reading Mr. Lustre's speech. Good morning. I am Jose Lustre, president of the Rural Bank of Hayen, a bank established in 1962. I started with the Rural Bank in 1963, and until now, I am still with it. Thus, I have seen the highs and lows of our bank and the programs we participated in, specifically the Masagana 99, wherein I was requested to talk about. I can only talk of the experiences I had with Rural Bank of Hayen during those times, and I can say that I can remember since this happened in 1972. So as I recall, the M99 program started soon after or about a year after the declaration of martial law in 1972. At that time, social unrest was starting to grow in Central Luzon. The lack of palay and rice was being felt since it was soon after the big floods of Central Luzon in the late 60s. Also, it was then that our town, as a rice producing area, was declared a pilot area of land reform wherein the tenanted farms were broken up, granting 5 hectares to each tenant farmer. These lands were subject to land reform, thus, there became a new ownership of farmlands in the area. The former landowners who provided the necessary capital, the tenants during the planting season, stopped lending to the tenants due to the land reform. Thus, M99 began. We started the financing of M99 through a special time deposit grant from the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines as a seed capital to provide rice production loans to identified farmer borrowers, agrarian reform beneficiaries, and members of the Samahang Nayon. After the initial grant of loans, the bank turned around and rediscounted the promissory notes of these loans to the BSP under the M99. This time no longer through an STD or special time deposit, but through farmer discounting promissory notes. The list of borrowers for these loans were provided by the established Samahang Nayons, and their farm holdings were verified and attested through the local Department of Agrarian Reform. In order to more or less encourage the RBs to grant these loans, which were unsecured except for guarantees among the members of the Samangnayon, these loans were guaranteed up to 85% against no payment due to pestilence and other acts of nature, for which the rural banks paid a premium of 1%. That was how we generated the necessary funds to sustain the program. The program called for the grant of a loan of 700 pesos per hectare tilled by the farmer beneficiary, 40% of which was for land preparation, and the remaining 60% to be released in kind as inputs such as fertilizer, insecticides, after deducting 5% of the 500 pesos, of the 700 pesos rather, to be deposited to the account of the particular Samangnayon Barrio Savings Fund. Thus, only 95% was available for production purposes. As an aside, I would like to state that perhaps the program should have considered an amount for the subsistence of the farmer from the time of planting to the time of harvest. I would also like to state that the M99 program started after the big floods of central Luzon, and it aimed to recover and increase production from 40 kavans per hectare to 99 kavans per hectare, thus easing the lack of rice then and growing social unrest in central Luzon. We in the rural banks believe that the farmlands that these farmer beneficiaries, members of Samang Nayans, were awarded to them by land reform, and these said lands could not be transferred except by hereditary succession, and thus it gave us an additional assurance that these loans would be repaid since they could be secured. Furthermore, I would like to state that during these times, very few of the children of these tenants were not able to pursue college education. Rural electrification was just then starting. The early phases of Masagana, phase 1 to 4, were blessed with few calamities, and thus farmers were able to harvest, pay their loans due to their peer pressure from the Samangnayon, including loans that they incurred outside the bank to provide for the subsistence. And they were also able to start sending their children to college. Let me also state that no other banking institution dared to extend M99 loans except for the rural banking system. However, even with good harvest, there were some borrowers who willfully failed to repay their loans since, as they said, that the interest charged by the rural banks was low and they prioritized paying their loans outside the banking system, which carried very high interest rates. They were not so many, however. They were not eligible for claims against the guarantee, thus we filed collection cases against the same borrowers. The majority, however, were able to pay their loans, thus the success of phase 1 to 4, where we achieved a collection rate of at least a rate of 90%. Phase 5, however, was beset by a series of typhoons, and a lot of farmers encountered difficulties in repaying their loans. We had to refinance them to recover. We claimed against the guarantee, and the guarantee paid for our maturing rediscounted loans with the BSP. Since we later learned that the guarantee was only a guarantee but not a payment, the loans of the farmers were unpaid. Thus, they remained in the books of the bank's past due loans, and to prevent them being tagged in default, the said loans were being restructured for 3 years, and new loans were granted to the eligible borrowers. It was then that we learned that two commercial banks started to give loans to the same farmer borrowers. Much to our dismay, we were informed that their charter mandated them to extend such loans. Their extending the same kind of loans to the same borrowers without our knowledge resulted to double financing. Thus, the same farmer borrower, tilling the same piece of land, now have two loans of the same kind to two different institutions. This aided to the default of loans and started the problem of Masagana 99. It was also during this time that people started saying that these loans were government doleouts by some politicians, thus defaults were expected. This probably led to the failure of M99. At this point, I may now state that the rural banks, not only my bank, but majority of the rural banks representing the private sector, due to the incentives and the assurances by the guarantees and ownership given by land reform, played an active role and dared to grant loans under the M99 programs. All other banks except government banks would not touch these loans with a 10-foot pole, but we also paid the price for it. Over 800 rural banks fell into trouble. And so you may ask, was the M99 a success or failure? I would venture to say that it was both a success and failure. Success in the sense that for a brief time, if I remember correctly, we were able to attain rice sufficiency, but we were able to export even a small amount of rice. Socially, it was a big success. Why? Because one, social unrest in Central Luzon was then on the rise, was quelled since people had income and food. Two, it enabled the children of tenant farmers who would not have been able to attend college. Generally, life in the rural areas which now are electrified became more progressive. The cost of this success, however, was a high default rate in the latter portion of the program. This was brought about not only by the calamities, but more so by the following: double financing on the same project by the rural banks and other banks. Two, rumors circulated that the funds used for M99 were government funds and were dole outs and did not need to be repaid. Three, mismanagement of many samahang nayons and in generally improper guidance of its members, such that the obligation to repay loans where many were indoctrinated on their privileges, but not on their obligations. There is, however, one still existing Samahang Nayon, that is the Samahang Nayon Santo Tomas Norte of Hayen, which we considered matured, and to which we have not qualms to grant unsecured loans up to 100,000 pesos for each member up until the present. More than 50% of the original beneficiaries of land reform, who are mostly the clientele of M99, are no longer in possession of their lands. Their lands have been sold, transferred or mortgaged to other people in violation of the land reform. The guarantee coverage did not extinguish the loans of the farmers, which remained past due but guaranteed in the repayment of rediscounted to BSP. This led to the high past due ratios of rural banks. While we appreciate the latter relief or bailout of rural banks under the SPAV program, for which not only RBs benefited but other banks as well. I'd like to state that while the loans were taken out of the books of the bank, we also wrote them off over a period of 10 years. It just gave us time to liquidate the said loans. After all, perhaps I'd like to state this experience was probably that we learned that subsidized rates were not helpful since lending rates were low and the borrowers gave preference to other loans which carried high interest rate. Today there is a DA program more or less similar or patterned after M99. This program is envisioned to increase or sustain palay production and is not subject to a specific amount of loan a borrower can obtain per hectare. The farmer decides how much he will need. Thus, he participates, he decides. The loan, although uncollateralized and for big amounts, is guaranteed up to 85%, including willful non payment by the borrower, except when misused by the bank and the guarantee is not made known to the public. It is for the protection and assurance of the bank. The loan is likewise insured with the Philippines Crop Insurance Corporation and is paid directly to the farmer borrower, including the interest. This program does not provide any technicians except when the farmer seeks his advice. It has taught the farmer to be independent and be an entrepreneur at that. We likewise did not rely on any listing from any agency. The bank extended loans under the program using its own finances, and all we did was to avail of that guarantee. We have been extending loans under this program for the past decade with a repayment of around 90% and a past due rate of around 3%, representing the 15% not covered by the guarantee. We have been extending loans for about 8 million per season. The difference between the two is that AGFP is easier to manage. The farmer borrowers were not only borrowers but also entrepreneurs. The lands that they till are owned by the borrowers and not subject to restrictions of land reform, since the said lands were paid for and redeemed by the said borrowers. End speech.
Thank you, Jim. Now let's go to the last but not the least of our discussion. Our last discussant is Dr. Santi Obien. He is really our agriculture guru around here. He is simply known as SRO to his friends and critics. He is a perpetual Department of Agriculture consultant, an architect of many national rice programs and others. He is accredited as an institution builder, particularly Phil Rice, the Philippine Tobacco Research and Development Center, and Mariano Marcos State University in Batak. At Phil Rice, he was the founding executive director. In college, he was my battalion commander of our battalion called Pack Their Bones. And Ding Panganiban and myself were members of the basketball team of that battalion, which we won in the intramurals. So Goro Sante, it's your turn.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Chancellor Roger Coino. It's my pleasure to greet and congratulate the illustrious members of Class 1960 who are celebrating the Diamond Jubilee this year. Class 60 has claimed to be the best class ever in UPLB. They produced 3 chancellors and 1 president of the university. I am not a member of the Masagana 99. The president gave me other assignments on tobacco and the university. And so, but I did work on rice after the Masagana 99 to remedy some of the problems that were encountered in the Masagana program. I must say now that the package of technology utilized in the Masagana 99 was a great innovation. Its contents are subject to changes and improvements, and there has been dramatic changes and improvements in those contents. Before I go further, Jim, can you delete some of those slides that I mentioned? I will be guided by some slides because I had to review the work, not being a direct participant. And so one of the things that were not mentioned was that rice self-sufficiency was a presidential issue during the campaign in 1965. And at that time, consumers were lining up just to buy 1 or 2 gantas of rice. And candidate Marcos promised that if he were to become president, rice will be made available to everybody. And so he did. 1965 to 1968, he did some great work. And by 1968, we were self-sufficient. We had an excess of production. And but that was in 1968, and an excess of, according to the record, 8 million sacks of rice, equivalent to 2.4 million metric tons of rice. But this was short-lived because at that time, they became complacent and the government focused its attention to other activities. And here then came the disasters of 71, 72, when we had the floods, as already mentioned, floods and typhoons and droughts, and the second generation problems of diseases and insect pest problems that almost shut down the production of rice in Laguna and in Central Luzon. And because of these elements, the Masagana 99 program was developed, as already mentioned. Well, what I'll do now is to discuss some of the activities that led to improve the technologies that were used, the limitations of the I mentioned, emphasize the limitation of the technologies that were used, and remedies that now have been achieved after 1977. And I would like to advance the idea now that the technologies have changed so much, so tremendously, that the goal of achieving rice self-sufficiency is probably much more feasible now than during the Masagana 99. Just to mention that the technical breakthroughs that were provided were, as already mentioned, were assembled by UPLB, ERI, BPI, and BIEX, focused on the rice varieties, the fertilizers and the pesticides. The loans program is already mentioned. But let me just say that the communication systems, the extension system, the training activities was great innovations, and that this continued to be a model that we have to pursue. What, as I mentioned earlier, what needs to be done is to modify, improve the contents of that package. And sure enough, the changes that have occurred during these years are the ones that I will have to emphasize. And in table 2, just to review, next. These are the data that you have been talking about. The yields before the Masagana 99 and the yield during the Masagana 99 and those after. You will note that while the high yielding varieties were implemented, the actual averages were below 3 tons. Below 3 tons because, as I will show it later, the fertilizer usage was really not that much, and the pesticide use were not as good as what we have now. They were wide spectrum. Next. But with all of this, we were able to export. You already mentioned that about 87,000 metric tons were exported. This was the success of the Masagana 99. In my calculation, actually, we exported about 507,000 metric tons. But others say that it's only 87,000 metric tons. So we exported, and this was the controversy between Secretary Dominguez and Senator Jaime Marcos, that somehow we did not export. We exported, but a modest amount. But they imposed later was quite tremendous, more compared to those earlier years. So, again, the reason why we really did not achieve much yield, in spite of the fact that in the experiments in Erie, IR8 had a potential yields of 5 to 10 tons. But these were never achieved in the field because they were susceptible to pest. If we plant IR8 right now, it would be good if we can get 3 tons because it's always it's very susceptible to pest. All others were so susceptible to this that at this time, if we were to plant them, they would not give us anything. In fact, IR36 was rapidly developed to overcome the susceptibility of IR8. And I will show you later that the varieties that we have developed after this base, which were propelled by our experiences in Masagana 99, are much better now. So let's we have now various series of these varieties produced after Masagana 99, and you will note that the rice varieties that we have developed just for 1990 to 2019 there are 205 varieties. And aside from this, there are also hybrid varieties now that yields up to even the highest yield that's recorded is 15.7 tons per hectare. So compared to those varieties during Masagana 99, there were only very few that we were planting. That's why when the pests came in, they just feasted on them. But this time now, you will note that in the last 35 years, there has never been any pest resurgence in a big scale. There are spotty. It's probably because the varieties that we deploy almost a dozen varieties every year. And so before the variety, the pest, insects or diseases, whatever, gets acquainted with the varieties, you have a new variety that is being planted. So, and which are relatively more and more resistant to the existing pests. The next slide will show you the number of hybrids. Hybrid varieties, there are about 107 varieties of hybrids that are not registered in the Philippines, but so through the National Seed Industry Council. About 30% of these are bred in the Philippines by both Erie, UPLB, and Phil Rice. All in all, we have 312 varieties that we can choose, compared to just a half a dozen during the Masagana 99. So this is a very big, very great improvement in the varieties that we are using, and these are all good eating qualities. These varieties have amylose content of at least not more than 22%. The only exception is RC222, and the exception is because it has very high yield. It can achieve a maximum of 10 tons. It is resistant to drought and also saline. But other than RC222, NSIC RC22, no, there's no other variety that has an amylose content above 22. So all of these are soft varieties. Our hybrids are also high quality, and these are now accepted by most of our farmers. By next season, this dry season, there will be more than 800,000 hectares to be planted to hybrids supported by the government, including fertilizers. So the next slide will show us the amount of fertilizer that were applied. One of the issues raised is that we were using too much fertilizer. It cannot be. The imports that we have shows that the amount of fertilizer in the country are very low, and the yields are also very below 3 tons. So it's not possible that we were overusing fertilizers. You need 20 tons per hectare, 20 tons to give you 1 hectare, one ton. So if the average yield were below 3 tons, we were not using more than 40 to 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare. If you apply, you are likely to get 8 to 10 tons or 11 tons per hectare. That because 20 kilos of nitrogen gives you 1 ton. But this table shows you the response of corn and rice to the volume of fertilizers. The next slide will show you the pesticide intake. The amount of pesticides used during the Masagana era were not so much compared to what we are using now. It's just that, one, they were misused. The farmers were not really sure of, were not sophisticated in the way they use the fertilizers. And also the pesticide that we were using then were wide spectrum. The next slide will show you some of these very toxic pesticides that are highly toxic. They have long persistence in soils and in water. The excessive and irrational use of insecticides, as they say, is because of the knowledge of the farmers. They were limited compared to what we have now. The next slide will show you the list of pesticides that were used, which we banned. Some of this, my direct participation in the Masagana 99 was as member of the Technical Advisory Committee of FPA, and we banned a lot of these insecticides, mostly insecticides, including molluscicide. And next slide. Yeah, so we have this current pesticide now, like cypermethrin. They have only a duration persistence in the field of one week, and you need only a small amount. So these are highly degradable and short duration and highly specific. Those that we were using during the Masagana 99 had wide spectrum. They kill even the non-target organisms. That's why farmers complained that there were the frogs are gone, the kuhul are gone, and the fingerlings are gone because they were very toxic. Those were the problems of the Masagana 99. Next. So this the Masagana 99 package of technology approach was very successful in irrigated areas, but probably not as much in rated environment. So we need the farming systems to be developed for to make this package of technology more responsive to the rated area. So in fact, the Masagana 99 was really more specific to the irrigated areas. So next, yeah. So in summary, from our observations, as you have also, as earlier speakers have said, that the Masagana 99 rice program was not without problems, but it's reasonable to assume that it was successful in averting, at least producing enough food for at that time, and in averting some potential social problems. And it gave us a lot of lessons. The lessons that we gained from that exercise next is are quite numerous. I can hear of the general concerns during this time that in the case of fertilizers, the distribution situation was not always smooth, and there has people complained about the prices of the fertilizers in relation to the price of the paddy. That's still a problem after this time. And the insecticides, sometimes there were insufficient supply. The weather was always terrible. And they said the better extension, credit, and irrigation and marketing. But it was highlighted that more R&D should be done to improve the rice varieties characteristic. And the insurance situation, crop insurance for the farmers to protect them from the risk of crop failures. Next. And so, because of our experiences, there were institutional development that were put up, and some of these, our leaders here, put them here as our, some of those who really did a lot of work on institution building. And I have put here the stars in the establishment of Phil Rice, led by Senator Angara, who was then Secretary of Agriculture, President of the University of the Philippines, and member of the Board of Trustees of IRI. And we have Dr. Lantican, two of them, Ding Panganiban, and Dr. Walmayor. Can we move on? Next. Well, where are you now? We have really moved on in a very fast way. The establishment of the institutions like Phil Rice have played a great role in upgrading our production system. Our goal at this time, since 1970, the production in 1970 was only 5.84 million metric tons. In 1980, the production of rice was 7.6 million metric tons. In 2010, the production was 15.8 million metric tons. And last year, 2019, was 18.82 million metric tons. But our population have increased tremendously. And that's why, although our production has trebled since the 70s, we are still importing rice. But Secretary Dar says that we expect a yield increase of at least 8% over that of last year for 2020. Our natural average now is 4.04 metric tons per hectare. And there are 33 provinces that are producing more than 4 tons, 29 provinces producing 3 to 4 tons, and about 20 provinces producing 3 metric tons per hectare. Some of the provinces like Nueva Ecija is averaging 5.3 to 6 tons. I mentioned about the institutions that were established. Let me see the institutions that were established. Next slide. Can you show that? These are the institutions that were built or established to respond to the problems of the Masagana 99. The establishment, of course, of the UPLB is important, the PICARD, and the establishment of the Pantabangan Dam to respond to the need for irrigations at the Magat Dam in Isabela, where we're established to handle the problems of fertilizers and pesticides. We have the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. We established the National Crop Protection Center and the Regional Crop Protection Center to handle these pest problems. And we are also, of course, Phil Rice was established to handle the total rice problem. And in our programs, we set up the Farmers Field School, where the pest problems were highlighted, and the farmers were trained on all the aspects of the ecology and management of the pest, the season-long training. And also, in terms of the quality and characteristics of our varieties, we established the National Seed Industry Council. We also put up the ATI replaced the BAEX and other training institute. So in a sense, we are able to move the lesson, our problems during the Masagana, and led us to establish all these institutions to sustain the efforts to make sure that the pesticide we apply, the fertilizer we apply, and the varieties we plant have better yields and better quality. Next. Can you put on the next slide? I mentioned about the varieties. There are 205 inbreds and 207 hybrid varieties. These are the yields. Look at the yields of the inbred varieties. The mean The mean yield is 5.3 tons at the experimental level, and the average high yield is 8.6 tons. But the hybrid 6.3 tons is the mean, the low average, but the high yield average is 10.5 tons. And I mentioned some of the farmers now are having attaining this kind of yields, much higher than during the Masagana 99. Next slide. So this is our program to achieve at least towards moving towards self-sufficiency. By this year, we target 91% sufficiency, and by next year we will achieve 94% sufficiency. Note the production is moving from 18.9 million metric tons to 20.2 million metric tons to 21.5 million metric tons per line. The yield average will also, of course, key strategies for this is to achieve increased yield, reduce cost, production costs, as well as the production losses in the post-harvest, and reduce marketing costs. Marketing costs includes milling and transportation. Next. Now, what are the new programs now of the DA? New programs, these are developed with in partnership with IRI. The next generation designed to hasten the generation of new varieties. We have now the RCM. This is rice crop manager. What does it do? We can interview a farmer, ask him the varieties he planted, what was his yield, what fertilizers did he put, what insecticide did he apply, and with a tablet you can now calculate how much fertilizer you used to achieve a certain yield level. Say if you want to 5 tons, he will calculate it, and the farmer can indicate. This is already being done in the farm. Prime, pest risk identification and management. Right now, the monitoring of the pest problems are delivered to key people in the field. The prism, this we can now estimate through we harvest the data from the satellites, and we can estimate the crop yields as well as the area planted and the weather forecasting. Let me mention a little bit about weather forecasting. When I was in Ilocos 2 weeks ago, last week, I tested the operations and mentioned that there is no rain in Ilocos. But Dr. John De Leon, the director of Field Rice, texted me that on 17 September, there will be 23.8 millimeters of rain. And on the 18th, there will be 80 millimeters of rain. And it did. It's a very precise estimate. We have also water rice, water use work, heirloom rice. We are documenting the heirloom varieties that are grown essentially in the Cordilleras, and the DNA system are being developed. Next slide. Now, we are talking about seeds and fertilizers. The program on seeds and fertilizers, we have a regular program. We have also rice resiliency program, and we have the RCEP. Now, what is the RCEP? This is really the program being funded under the rice tarification law. The government is collecting at least, providing at least 10 billion to the rice program, 5 billion for mechanization, 3 billion for the production and distribution of free, these are all free seeds, free inbred seeds. And another 1 billion for loan, administered by the Land Bank of the Philippines and the DBP, and 1 billion for training and extension, 100 million for field rice, 100 million for field mech, 100 million for ATI, and 700 million for TESTA. The irrigation, we also we have the regular budget and DSWM and NIA. I mentioned already about the loan, the production loan, and also the ACP, agricultural credit. The production, the strategies are again increasing the yield, production costs, and post-harvest losses. And there's also the rice diversification project to ensure that there are, we support not only, also value adding and promoting commodity and income diversification and facilitate displaced farmers and farm workers. We talk about displaced rural workers. This is part of the current department program. Okay, can we move on? Next, Jim, next slide. Hello? I think we are not communicating now. The next slide, I think, indicates that beyond rice, we are also now promoting crop after rice, especially in the rain-fed areas, production of vegetables and other corn and other commodities. In fact, in the rain-fed areas in Lubao, there's a pilot project of field rice supported by the Department of Agriculture, because those farmers, rain-fed farmers, are producing vegetables. They have a association where they supply a certain volume of vegetables to the markets. And lately, they were awarded another 51 million pesos to continue the program. So these are some of the things now that the Department of Agriculture are emphasizing, so that other crops should be grown as much as possible after even irrigated rice. Next. Hello. Hello. Yes, next. Next slide.
Yeah, can you see the food safety?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, po.
safety, of course, these are all promoted by the Department of Agriculture, because we have to promote the adoption of climate-resistant technologies among our farmers. There is a lot of training that are being conducted to ensure that the farmers are familiar with the technologies related to not only to rice, but the other commodities that can be within their environment. Okay, next. I think the last slide. The latest information estimates in the third quarter is that on a quarter-by-quarter basis, there will be an increase of 16.4% in palay production. So I think that our interventions now are coming up, increasing. As we have indicated, that with the harnessing the technologies, the better technologies that we have generated over the years are now maturing, and with good weather, we expect a 16.4% increase. Last season, it was the increase in yield was 7.1%. And I think we have the last slide. From the lessons that we learned from the Masagana 99, there is really, as I mentioned earlier, the package was okay. the content are the ones that are being modified or improved. And each of the administrations named Masagana some other names. Like Kore call it Rice Action Program. It's still the same. The massive training, etc., that was developed under the Masagana are still being implemented. The contents of that package are the ones that are being modified or improved. FBR, they call it Gintong Ani Rice Program. ERAP call it Agriculture Makamasa Rice Program. GMA called it Gintong Masaganang Ani Rice Program. Pinoy call it Agri-Pinoy Rice Program. And PRDI call it Masaganang Ani at Mataas na Kita, or Ani at Kita. That's the coinage of Secretary Dar. So, as I mentioned, the varieties are the one that's changing. The nature of the pesticides are changing. The fertilizer management are changing. We now employ new techniques in accommodating the inputs. Now, I mentioned earlier about rice self-sufficiency, and you know, if I were president, but I'm not, the DA rice self-sufficiency program should be sustained. In fact, the rice self-sufficiency program is enshrined in the Charter of Field Rice. In such a case, there is no, what's that? We don't buy, there is no surplus, there is no substitute to local rice. We don't buy, we don't sell. Rice quality. And so I said, let's do it. Buhay. So let me say it again. The Masagana 99 was a success. There were limitations, and the limitations they were susceptible to pests. They were not responsive to fertilizer. What we developed with all the institutions that we established to improve those packages, the contents of the packages. We improved the varieties are now very, yields can go up to 10, even 15 tons. And the pesticide that we are using now are short duration, is very specific. And the fertilizer applications now can be calculated precisely based on the soils, based on the experiences. And these are available. They can be, all this information now can be downloaded from the data bank of Field Rice and Erie. So we are moving, we have achieved a higher level of technology. That's why I believe, and I firmly subscribe to the idea that we can be self-sufficient because we have the technology. The idea that it's unfortunate, of course, that even with the increase in our production from 5.84 million metric tons in 1970 to 18.82 in 2019, we are still deficient. Why? Because the population has grown so much from 5.84 million people, Filipinos, in 1970 to now over 108 million. We are trying to compare ourselves with Thailand. In 1970, Thailand's population was 200,000 more than the Philippines. Now the population of Thailand is only 70 million, growing at 1%, while our population has grown to 108 million, growing at 1.53%. Our land area for rice is only 1/3 that of Thailand. And yet we are feeding 38 million more people than Thailand. 38 million is more than the population of Malaysia. So this, in resolving all these issues, we should complete the equation, the supply and the demand. The demand is growing more than the capability of the supply. But let us say that we are not producing plenty of rice. From 1970, we were producing 5.8 million metric tons. We are now producing 18.82 million metric tons. Is that not increasing production? With that, thank you very much for the opportunity to be involved in this exercise.
Thank you, Dr. Abien. Dr. Koino, you have the floor po. Please unmute po.
Dr. Koino, tapos na tayo, ano? Do you think we still have time for question and answer? Baka sumobra na tayo sa time natin.
Mga one or two questions.
One or two questions?
Yeah.
Sige, I have a question here for Santi. Santi, first of all, I think you presented an excellent paper. Many information that are fairly new to many of the listeners. At any rate, in the interest of time, I have only one question. And please not too long answer because I think we have time problem now. And the question came from a classmate who did not indicate who she is. But the question is, what regions or provinces are highly dependent on rice, and which are least dependent and thrive on corn and root crops as carbohydrate sources? But there is a cleanse. What happened to the campaign to mix rice with corn or root crops? Thank you. That's the question.
Who can we address that to, sir?
To Dr. Abien.
Okay, to Dr. Abien. Dr. Abien, please unmute po.
Nawala.
Kailangan lang po i-unmute ni Dr. Abien. Okay, sir. Sir, can we also there is a person on the floor also that's raising his hand to ask a question. Maybe we can collate the question also and then redirect it to the one who could respond it after.
Okay, I think that's okay.
Yeah. There's a question. There's a hand being raised by a fellow named Leo Sebastian. So I'll ask him to unmute and.
Oh yeah, he's the former director of Phil Rice. Okay, I think
yes,
you better recognize him.
Yes,
him.
Dr. Sebastian, you may speak po.
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon also. And
morning, Leo.
Yes. Yeah, I was listening to the resource persons this morning and I learned a lot. And I think it's always very nice to listen to those who really did the work and implemented the program. And I was actually writing my question already here. And I was saying that as Ma'am Rika said a while ago, if we are to profit from the lessons of that shining moment of M99, there is one thing that I think I can take away this from the discussion, and that is, despite the fact that Dr. Obian said that maybe there's a problem in Masagana 99 when it comes to technology, and there are other constraints. One thing that we can say is that Masagana 99 was a program that was sustained for some time, and it attained, and that's one of the reasons I think why it gained success. It was sustained, and also it attained scale. So there was a scale, whether it was adoption by farmers or the scope of the program, it attained scale. And I think this is one thing that is lacking in many of the succeeding programs. Many of the succeeding programs were not sustained. They change every time, although Dr. Kisombing also said that Masagana 99 was a dynamic program. It changed also. But the changes that happened in other programs were so radical that it created confusion, as what Dr. Secretary Panganiban also mentioned. Masagana 99, there was something that unified them, and they tried to avoid the confusion in the field. So there was sustained. So the program was sustained, and then the other thing is scale. Succeeding programs have many good ideas, many good things that were said, but the problem is we have demonstrations here and there, models here and there, but we never attain scales, or the scale were limited. Of course, some of them attained big scale, but not the scale that gave Masagana 99 the point where we were able to attain self-sufficiency. So from Secretary Ding and probably Dr. Kisombing, what would you recommend to the current programs that we should do so that we should be able to sustain the program and also attain scale? What are your recommendations or suggestions, looking back from your experience and also looking at where we are now in the Philippines?
Okay,
Thank you very much, Leo. Leo, by the way, was also a former director of the Philippine Rice Research Institute. Yes, Ed, you can answer.
Sir, let's I think Dr. Obian has already unmuted his mic. So
okay,
let's have Dr. Obian address the first question po. And then we can then redirect the question of Dr. Leah to Sir Ed and Sir Ding Panganiban po. Dr. Obian, you have the floor po.
You cannot hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now po.
Okay. The question raised earlier was which provinces are not eating as much rice as,
and which are least dependent on corn and root crops.
Actually, Cebu is one province and city that likes to eat corn, except that the tinigib variety that they want is not always available. The region 9, Zamboanga areas, as well as the arm, as far down to Hulo, they eat a lot of cassava and sweet potato. So all others are really they like are eating this. So the idea of that's why the food self-sufficiency program that was launched by Secretary Alcala included banana, cassava, sweet potato, and banana, cassava, and sweet potato. These three food high carbohydrate content crops were included. The problem with that is that there are also other uses of this, like cassava is part of the feed system for livestock, and sweet potato, they are also produced for other more high value foods. So I think that actually Secretary Panganiban used to say that the reason why we were able to have quite a sufficient rice before is because we have high production corn, sweet potato, cassava, and banana. But I the government is encouraging the use of rice of corn as mixed with rice, but the yield of the palatable varieties, white corn, is quite low. So I think that the solution to this is really intensify the production of rice, which we have the high yielding varieties. We have higher yielding varieties than the yellow corn. So I believe that the best solution to food security is still producing more rice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And then
Any other?
we address it to the question of Dr. Sebastian to Sir Ed po ba? To Dr. Kisumbing po?
I think to Ed and to Santi.
Okay po. Sir Ed,
Uh,
you can go ahead po.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you po.
If I were to do Masagana 99 again, I will do it the same way we did it in the first few years. Emergency, walang choice. We have very limited technology. We are facing starvation, hunger, chaos. We do it talagang all out. Sabi ni Ding, all out. But then as we got over the main problem of food, famine and hunger, I think the next thing to do is to prioritize, identify the provinces where rice production would be most competitive. We cannot go on producing rice in Cebu, for example, or in other places. I think during our time, na-identify na namin about 20 or 22 provinces. Now, if we concentrate rice production there, we will get all that we need. Bigyan mo ng support, bigyan mo ng irrigation, bigyan mo ng credit, todo-todo ang technician. Yung mga ibang areas, move them towards other crops. Cassava, corn, and then concentrate doon sa productive areas. Less typhoon, etc. So, magiging competitive ang rice production. And that production can supply the other places which cannot produce the rice that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Meron pa? Paring Roger, maybe you can take over now.
Sir, sorry, we have one more question po pala, sir.
Oh, one more. Yeah. One more question.
I'm taking this from the internet po. This is a question coming from YouTube from a gentleman, Augusto Rodriguez po. He said that, as Director Ding Panganiban said, the unique feature of Masagana 99 is that there is full control over production technicians who implement the program. In a developed setup, this cannot happen. In a devolved setup, this cannot happen. There is no single comprehensive plan and difficult to operationalize, having to deal with a lot of LGUs. If Pantawid Pampamilya program, the 4-piece program, can be implemented by a national agency, can't we use the same model to implement a comprehensive rice or any crop production program in terms of managing production technicians? Who would you suggest we address that to, sir? Can we give that to Dr. Obien po ba? Or
Yeah, I think Dr. Avien.
okay.
Favorite siya ngayon eh.
Well, well, the idea of having the national government managing the extension system is already a myth and academic. Is the extensionists are already devolved. But I tell you that in a way, the devolution is a good idea. It gives the provincial government, municipal government, the initiative to handle this. In all these provinces where there is a good system, or the government, the governors and the provincial agriculturists are doing very well. I mean, they support agriculture. They are very happy. Nueva Ecija, for example, they produce the highest yield of rice, the highest yield of onions, the highest yield of vegetables. Isabela, for example, they do an excellent job. There are only a few provinces now that have to come in, and that's why we are now advocating for the province-led extension system, which will be supported. The province-led extension system will be supported by the national government. See, the national government is putting so much to the provinces, but it's not well organized. So we are now going to organize so that the extension system will be a collaborative activity of the provincial and the national through a memorandum of agreement. We are now testing it. The pilot extension province. This concept is now started in Ilocos Norte. There is already, they have signed the memorandum of agreement for a province-led extension system, which require that all extensions within the province must be managed, a management committee involving all the agencies, national and provincial, that will look at the content of that extension agenda. They will decide on what extension activities, production activities, development activities will be done in the province. And the secretary has already given his support that all the 81 provinces will eventually evolve into this system. So I think we are moving towards a more effective extension systems where the LGUs will be involved. It says that in the pilot system that of the Masagana technology, package of technology, it was tested in Bulacan. And one of the major conclusions is that the involvement of the LGUs is a great innovation in extension system. So we are still within that framework of ideas of Secretary Tanco. But we need support, specific support, defined support from the national government. So we are not really doing very bad. As I mentioned already, the production is going up in all aspects. The issue is, of course, how to work this out, not only institutionalize all of this, the production systems, the loan system, the marketing system, the value adding have to be put in together. And by involving the local government, we can do other things. So I'm sure that there are difficulties, but let us be clear now. The package, the systems, the management of the package of technology was excellent. And that's what the first thing that I said. The only thing that had to be done is to change the content of that package. And what we are doing, what we did, what has been done through these institutions that were established based from our experiences is that we have improved the varieties in the package. We have improved the pesticides in the package, low toxicity, more selective, and the fertilizer, how to apply the fertilizer, how much amount. We have now systematized that through our modern way of calculating the requirements of the plant. So I think that things have improved gradually. How can you feed 108 million the technologies have not improved. It had improved, and the management have improved. But of course, uh, it's not sufficient to meet the requirements of an expanding population growing at 1.53%. And we're comparing ourselves with countries that have bigger land areas that have less population. We have the biggest population, 110, 108, 110 million. We are 38 million more than the Thai, or 27 million more than the Vietnamese. They have bigger land area. So, but let's accept that we have good technologies because of the scientific institutions that we established, derived from our experiences during the Marcos years.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much,
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Bien. That was, yes, Ed. Ed. Ed Q. You like to add something? Ed Q. You recognize. Unmute yourself.
Thank you, thank you. Alam mo, yung devolution of extension, I was very, very concerned. I thought that was a major mistake. Kasi sa umpisa, nagkakagulo. Those extension workers were just being assigned all kinds of things. And the mayors and governors did not know how to handle all these people that suddenly became part of their staff. Pero over the years, nakikita ko, I think that was a good move. Kasi as the ATI became stronger, they can go ahead and provide the training for these people. Ang kailangan lang ng mga extension worker, matrain, and ATI can provide that. The day-to-day operations of these people, hayaan na natin sa mayors and governors. So the central government will only provide technical training, support, etc. Operational support, actual operation sa local government. And ito nangyayari ngayon, according to Mr. Lustre, rural banker, ang mga extension workers daw ngayon magagaling. So he is quite happy. So while before okay lang, ngayon hindi naman daw masama. Okay na. So this is, I think, a very good move for the ministry to strengthen the ATI to provide technical backstopping to the local governments. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much, Ed. I am very happy that Santi mentioned about the provincial-led extension system. Some of you may know, this is a favorite project of the Coalition for Agriculture Modernization in the Philippines, a group co-founded by our president, Dr. Emil Javier, and he is the chairman of the board, and be the president, Benigno Pexon. And the first pilot project in this so-called provincial-led extension system is Ilocos Norte. And the project, of course, is led by Santi Ovien and Rex Navarro. Santi, thank you for mentioning that.
Mhm. I think, sir, it's very nice that the points being raised also on extension. No? It's also, I think, one of the progress, or at least the trend towards why extension, or at least extension workers are also progressing in terms of capacity, is that there is also a national professional organization that also works closely with extension workers, which I believe is the Philippine Extension and Advisory Services Network, or PhilISnet. So I think overall, like what Dr. Obien has alluded to po, no, that there were a lot of lessons learned taken during from the Masagana 99. And I think I would say, maybe confidently, if pwede, na this is something that the young people also need to learn and hear from, especially, and I'm very privileged and honored to actually to sit and learn from quote unquote the masters, or the at least the people who were behind the program, and also really been frank to say that there were lapses that needs to be addressed. And I think that's for our generation to also learn from the previous generation and see how we can address those kinds of lapses in achieving rice self-sufficiency, or even in general food security for the country. So I think that's very crucial. For the comments po, sir, I think they're not questions. Mostly a lot of the comments that are coming from the chat box are mostly congratulatory messages, or at least saying that congratulations to class of 1960 for organizing this very informative and successful webinar. Dr. Virginia Cardenas also said that she could relate to the issues raised because her dissertation was on the adoption of the M99 package of technologies in 1974, where it yielded lessons on why it's best to promote best fit agricultural practices, considering local farm conditions. So I think those are some of the things that yeah, we are learning from generation to generation, and I would really hope that our generation also would take on the baton and kind of take on the lessons and see how we can run further and address the issues and the lapses raised in this webinar. So, Dr.
Excellent, Jen.
Villarreal, thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Do I endorse it back to you or to Dr. Coino po?
No, I think to Dr. Coino at baka tayo sobra-sobra ng time.
Oo nga po eh. Oo nga po. Sige po, sir. Let me endorse. Dr. Coino, you have the floor. Please unmute po.
Okay, that was great. Everybody did a fine job. Now we will leave it up to Emil Javier to do the recap and the tying up of all of the lessons. And for my part, I would say that Dr. Obien's presentation is a convincing argument that we should support research and development. We started with the role of technology in Masagana and IR8. Now we are ending up with so many hybrids. And therefore, we started with a problem around IR8. Now we are ending up with a hopeful perspective of things to come. So may I call on classmate Emil Javier to give the recap and tying up of lessons. Thank you.
Okay, Roger. It's already 12:30, so we are more than an hour past our schedule. So I will not dare detain you any longer. I will just say a few words, but allow me first to thank our speakers and our panelists, si Ed Sumbing, si Orly Sakay, si Ting Panganiban, si Rika, si Mr. Lustre, and Santi Obien, because they really did a great job of laying down the premises of Masagana 99, our direct experiences, and then moving forward, what are the lessons learned and what we are now doing in the last part of Santi Obien's presentation. So I think the message I would like to put together is that Masagana 99 succeeded for the purposes for which we launched it. We produced more rice, enough for our requirements, and a little for export. But there were problems. The problem of, say, misuse of pesticides. But that was the state of the art, state of the science at that time. So after that, of course, as Santi Obien, then we came up with more benign pesticides. We were more strict in applying the pesticide. Then we end up with more varieties with more resistance. Now, the issue that we over-applied fertilizer was debunked by the data as presented by Santi. In fact, we were not applying enough. Anyway, the real issue was one of credit. And that problem still remains with us, although a lot of lessons have been learned. And I think Mr. Lustre, unfortunately, was not able to come, but he had a number of suggestions that we should take a look into. But the point is, the narrative that the Filipino cannot rise above mediocrity is not correct. And we don't accept that because in Masagana 99, we succeeded. And the successor programs of Masagana 99 built upon it and solved many of the deficiencies and flaws. So I would like to leave it at that. And I know we have to have more discussions on what we have to do moving forward. But the message is clear. We have enough technology to concentrate or cluster our rice production in the favorable areas and produce all the rice that we need at cost competitive with the imports. But then those who cannot compete, the rice farmers who cannot compete with imports, we must help them to move into higher value crops. But that is easier said than done. There must be a glide path. And this is what we are trying to do now with the new administration, moving some of the coconut farmers, the rice farmers, into multiple cropping and all kinds of improvements, and encouraging them to go into other crops, even more profitable than rice. So with that, let me thank again everybody for joining us. It was a great experience para sa akin. And I would like to thank our class members for, for participating and collaborating with us in this endeavor. So with that, thank you very much and till we meet again.
Dr. Javier,
Yes.
if I may, sir, I'd like to request the participants here in Zoom to turn on their videos for at least 10 seconds so that we can put this out in the stream on Facebook and YouTube as and also share it with the general public. Okay, so all right, are all the screens on po? I still see there are some other pages that are at least some other videos that are still off, but okay, so we Dax, can you give us a good countdown, or is this running already for the couple of seconds? Okay, and then what we'll do po, in 5 seconds, let's all wave at our cameras po. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. Sige po. Thank you very much, and I'll be playing this outro po. Thank you po. This has been a great opportunity for Dream Agritech to help class of 1960.